Hi, Cliff. This is Julie again. This isn't quite as deep, but I was curious. There's some stuff up on the internet about Dan Burisch in a box, and I was curious if your data had any information about that.
Yes, Julie. I have all kinds of information showing up around Dan Burisch because of the amount of verbiage that's associated with him. So, for instance, in our lexicon, we do get information about specific personalities. Excuse me. These personalities have associated with them archetypes. The archetype of Dan Burisch and his looking glass business and some of the stuff that he stated make a good story, but we don't have any backing within our lexical discussions to suggest that Dan Burisch is in any way as he claims. So, and in fact, there's a lot of the archetypes within the structure that we hold, the context that we hold for Dan Burisch in this other subset that would seem to suggest that he's part of a disinformation a situation for whatever reason, personal gain or whatever, I don't know. This brings up, there's several individuals that are out there that keep showing up within our data sets, within the archetypes, and they, for instance, are promulgating, in the case of Dan Burisch, the timeline business, which is a fine understanding of things, however limited, but there's no evidence to support that the claims that are being made from these individuals, however cohesive, are anything other than a giant scam, if you will. So it brings up the issue of the gray aliens. A common characteristic of the aliens as is described by all of the whistleblowers at all levels, no matter how many races they're describing, is that they basically fall into two categories. Those that are like our Earth humans, the Nordics, for instance, or other individuals who look as individuals. They may resemble each other genetically the way that one Norwegian might resemble another Norwegian, but they will have individual characteristics. These individual characteristics set their face apart from any other face, and they fall into what we categorize here at Half Past Human as fifth-order beings. Now, if we look at the gray aliens and the others of their ilk, the little gray aliens, big gray aliens, just doesn't matter. All of these people, all of these beings that are claimed by Burisch to be humans devolved in the future, there is a common subset that denies his claim. That common subset is the idea that each and every one of these individuals look identically the same. Now, they have a reason for this theoretically within Dan Burisch's storyline, and that is that the DNA degraded to the point where basically they're all clones, and thus they are our descendant, if you will. Not descendants, not progeny, but a single individual that has been cloned repeatedly. I find this not to be credible. The reason that I find this not to be credible is that all of the gray aliens show themselves consistently to be identical to each other without the ability to have any distinguishing characteristics. The same kind of thing that we find in fourth-order beings, such as insects. If we examine a praying mantis, each and every one of the praying mantises is as though it had been cloned or stamped out of a template. They are a fourth-order being. There are many fourth-order beings here on our planet, and there are also fifth-order beings such as humans. And you will note that wherever humans get involved with life, such as breeding dogs, cats, horses, anything, we have a tendency to increase diversity, not decrease it. Also, that is the way that universe operates. When DNA degrades, as is the case right now, we're in the sixth largest extinction period in our planet's history, and it may well become the largest. It's still growing, we just don't know. But wherever these things occur, mutations are also found, and mutations cause diversity. They do not restrict diversity. So therefore, Burisch's whole structure is built on some predicates that I cannot find a reason to support. This causes me to really look at a lot of his other statements. And this is at the same time that we find archetypes within Burisch's context that are similar to the archetypes that we find, for instance, with this individual calling himself Dr. Deagle. Now, Dr. Deagle is an interesting character. and he is at the periphery of the consciousness world, if you will. That say that we have Project Camelot as the center of this consciousness world, and it's whirling around. It's collecting at its edge, at its fringe, some individuals which gravitate towards the center. And we see that within the Project Camelot world that the Dan Burisch view, timelines, and everything is discussed as though it were reality, and no debate is really taking place on that. Some of the same archetypes that are there are also found within Deagle, and having done some background checking on these individuals with reality, I know, for instance, that those archetypes relate back to the shadow government. So thus, for instance, there is a suggestion that Deagle is indeed being paid by the CIA or whoever, NSA, whatever, the one of the shadow governments. I also think that this may be the case with Burisch, and that there are some unlikely, very hard to overcome contradictions between the stuff that Burisch says and what we can actually find out in reality. So at this point, I don't put much credence in it, and I think that it may be, whether he's wittingly or not doing it, he may be part of a disinformation campaign. Now, Dr. Deagle, I know, is willingly part of this whole thing in terms of what he's doing. Dan Burisch, I can't say that he is an agent willingly. He just may be a dupe and may have been in a compartmentalized structure, and indeed may have worked for the black ops and the shadow government, but his level of understanding is limited, to say the best. End of statement.